Hey everybody, this is Perch. We talk about new audiences all the time, but usually that new audience is code for kids or teens, or at least on the younger end of the spectrum. So this viewer writes in with a mail that is pretty much destined to get me mocked in the comments, but let's do it anyway. It says, "Hey Perch, I've been thinking about how comic books are always looking for new readers, and how that typically means targeting kids. I was just wondering if comics targeted to a new audience among older demographics, would that be viable? Or is the children market significantly greater?" Well, the kid market is greater. And for one kind of key reason, it's because when you market to that audience, you're making, especially with a subscription based product or a product that basically is going to continue, you're making one huge assumption. And that assumption is that if you capture somebody as a customer, they're going to continue to be a customer, and they're going to continue to be a customer for 50 years or so. So it's that you're not necessarily thinking about, hey, I'm excited to grab this kid, as politicians do. Um, see what I did there? Anyway, it's more about, hey, I'm going to grab this lifelong customer. That's more where people are coming from. And you know, it's not wrong to kind of think that and go down that track and want to appeal to that. That's absolutely the right thing that people should be doing. But there is money on the table. And you bring up at least one point. It's not that you should go out and kind of figure out ways to market to older people, but it is a fact that companies right now are finding a lot of cash in an older audience, and they're finding it there because of a couple key reasons. The older audience has more money. They typically are, they've been working, they've got jobs, if they're moving to retirement, they've got money to spend on this, which means you can market it more expensive, which means you can, actually, raise your prices. And there's a couple companies, I know whiskey, there's a bunch of whiskey companies right now that are really aggressively targeting the, 50, 60, 70, all of which are ages older than me, Mumbles, but basically targeting older audiences. And they're doing it with the idea of like, hey, these guys have cash. And many of them have more time on their hands, and many of them are, maybe wanting to accelerate that path toward death. So let's go ahead and market some unhealthy liquor at them. I don't know, but regardless, there cars is another one that's historically done a lot in marketing toward older audiences. We have really significant campaigns that are just designed to specifically say we want to sell to this older group. The other one that kind of surprises me lately is seeing how there's certain video games that are also starting to go there, and that gets to the other reason. People who are in their 20s and 30s when a lot of these things started, video games, and they're big collectors into comic books. They're older now. Obviously, they're getting older, and yet they're still looking to kind of cling on to that childhood. So my suspicion is over the next 10 to 15 years, you're going to see more, things, more of what Gen X really embraced, which was, music and movies and games, and to much lesser extent comics. You're going to see more things marketed to that group, but now you're marketing to people who are in their 40s and 50s and 60s. That's where it's going to go, and it is going to flip a few things on its head. But by and large, yes, the kids market is better to get, because if you can capture it successfully, then you're starting the track for 50, 60 years worth of revenue rather than 20. However, as the argument would go, an older audience has, like I said before, has more money. Typically, is a little easier to grab than a kid. A kid has to, they've got less cash to, decide what to buy, or they've got to convince a parent to buy it for them. Whereas an older audience can do a lot more spontaneous purchases. If comics ever return to the newsstand, I think you would see I mean, certainly it'd be interesting to see what you would see, because arguably you could put, I mean, unfortunately none of this really works. But if you could put a higher priced, premium offering out for an older audience that could be in a place where it could be a spontaneous buy, I think you do very well. I think, quite frankly, that's one of the reasons why crowdfunding stuff works, because it does get to be a spontaneous buy. It's also one of those things where the person is buying kind of into a person as much as a comic itself. And I would bet that if you looked at the demographics of a lot of these crowdfunding campaigns, you'd find they skew older. Not necessarily, everybody there is in their 40s or 50s, nothing like that. But you would definitely skew older than comics. And, reason behind that, they're more expensive. It's an online purchase. It gets to be a little bit more in the moment kind of purchase. That's one reason why, the campaigns and crowdfunding has linked so much to, online streams and social media posts and other things. It's because you're grabbing people who who are like, well, sure, I'll go buy that. I mean, again, another difference I think between comics as they were in the 80s, where they were very successfully able to pull in kid readers, to today, is that in the 80s you had, first of all, comics everywhere, and it became an entertainment vehicle for people while the parent was off doing something else, and it was cheap, so it was relatively simple to buy it with kind of change you have in your pocket. And so the whole system worked. And today, it's the same thing. It's just those people have gotten older and they're buying crowdfunding as opposed to there being any kind of newsstand. And it's, except instead of $1, it's now $25. And so anyway, there's a whole market there. I think that if you're a comic company, and this again goes to if you're DC or you're Marvel, you should be able to pull in that audience relatively easily. In many cases, because you already have them. We talk about the collector market and the people who've been buying comics forever, and the people who are just kind of want what they want, and are just trying to recreate the thing that they've had for a long time or keep it. And what's the we say collector, but another word we could use is older, because those people who are collecting the 70s and 80s, they're now in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. That's who they are. That is that audience. And so I do think you can market successfully to them. I do think you can pull in more money from them. You might argue that that's pretty much the audience that's propping up comics today. And I think that definitely is true in a lot of cases. I think that, comics is, it's a bit of a misnomer. I think the creators and a lot of people are like, oh, look at the young fans of the MCU, and they'll show pictures of like kids in their, Miss Marvel costume and all that kind of stuff, and they'll promote that. But the reality is, the people who are floating them on the comic side probably skew a lot closer to late 30s, 40s. That's probably the bulk of the people who are there. It is not kids in Miss Marvel costumes that's doing it. It's older. It's an older audience. So absolutely. I think that it would be smart if comic companies marketed to that group. I think it'd be easy to do. I think they're by and large they're already there. I think you need to be careful about trying to squeeze more blood from that stone in some cases with how much you want to charge for things. But I think it's there. If you had your choice and you guaranteed to pull in one audience or another, you pull in the kids because it's a longer audience. But there's probably a lot of very easy money on the table that isn't even being grabbed today from the older group. Anyway, something to think about. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Recommend me for AARP, and thanks for listening.